Okay? Banks account for their reserves, they account for their loans, they account for their deposits in such a way that it paints a very clear picture of the bank's, financial health. Okay? So the way they do it is through, you can go now if you want. They use generally accepted accounting principles, okay? And in those principles, assets always have to equal liabilities, okay? So what are assets? You got it. So these are things that are owned by the bank. Liabilities? What is owed, okay? So the only difference between the two is an N. So that's important. You don't like that? No, you're not. Okay, so the cash a bank is holding, they actually own, okay? It might belong to somebody else, but the way they account for that is they show that they actually owe the depositors, okay? So they're holding cash of $100,000 in this example, right there, and they owe that cash to its depositors. So far, so good? So just like in our Pine Gulch story, when the guy taught you a little bit about accounting, he said that both sides have to equal, right? They always have to equal. And every time there's one entry, there's going to be an offsetting entry. Doesn't have to be on the different side. You could have two entries on the same side as long as they offset each other. Okay? So what if assets don't equal liabilities? Then there's something wrong. Somebody messed up. Maybe they did it on purpose. The point is that the law says assets have to equal liabilities. And in the accounting world, if your assets don't equal accountabilities, then your assets in jail. And that's very important to note. Okay? There's a lot of federal prisons where white-collar criminals are sitting. Okay? So that's important. Let's roll. So I'm going to show you how a bank is formed. Okay? This process that I'm going to go through is really just illustrative. It's not something you have to, totally memorize and all that stuff. I'm just going to show you how a bank accounts for assets and liabilities. Okay? So the first thing that happens is, y'all know Michael Scott? Okay. Yeah, when Michael Scott was a child, he was never allowed to be the banker when he played Monopoly. I don't know if y'all knew that. Okay. So when he grew up, he decided he wanted to have a bank. So he decided to start a bank. So he took $250,000 cash from his retirement account, and he decided he'd start a bank. So the new bank has to do accounting. Okay, so Oscar helps him out, and he does the accounting. Go back. It's $250,000. Okay. So here's what happens. All right. The bank accounts for the cash right here as an asset. Okay, because if they're holding it, they own it. But at the same time, they owe their founder $250,000. So if Michael decides to sell the bank, that's basically his capital investment. Okay, so the bank would have to give him back the money. Everybody got it? All right, cool. So the next transaction, in order to have a bank, you need a building, a safe or a vault, and a calculator. Agreed? So he's going to buy a building, a safe, and a calculator for $240,000. How do we account for that? Okay, so we're going to take 240 out of the cash, right? Then what? That's the confusing part. What do we do then? That's where you tripped. Okay, so that's good that you tripped, because now you're not going to trip again. So basically, if Michael buys the building and all that stuff for $240,000, the bank doesn't owe him less money. Okay, so that's why the liabilities can't change. So instead, we make the offsetting entry right here on the asset side. Okay, so we do deduct $240,000 from cash, but now the bank owns the property, right? So those are assets. Does that make sense, Ben? Yeah. So good? All right, so both sides still balance, right? Because that's the key. They always have to balance. Wait. Wait, nothing. We got to keep going. So now they have a bank. Okay? Got 30 minutes left. All right. Both sides balance. Everything's good. So Michael convinces Dwight to open an account. So Dwight takes his life savings of $100,000 and he deposits it into the bank. So far, so good? So now the bank is going to have an additional $100,000 in cash, right? And the bank owes the money back to Dwight, correct? Okay? So we account for it like this. We add 100,000 to cash, and then we have a new liability called the demand deposits. Okay? Gabby, it's okay. No, it's okay. The stuff we do after this is more important. Okay? Right now I'm just trying to illustrate that they always offset each other. Okay? So is everybody cool with this? We have an extra 100,000 in cash, and now we owe the 100,000 back to Dwight. So that's our demand deposits. Okay? So basically what happened is right there. Next, both sides equal, everything's cool. Okay? Then Dwight writes a check. Okay? He needs a new tractor for his beet farm. So he's going to write a $50,000 check. The person who receives the check takes it and cashes it. Okay? So the bank is going to have to give this person how much money? So what's going to happen to the cash balance? Good. So now this side over here is only going to equal 300,000, right? So how do we offset that so that both sides are equal still? Yes, Gil, you're right. We subtract it from the demand deposit, right? So it's just like when you guys use your debit card. What happens to your checking account? It goes down. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so we reduce the cash holdings by 50,000, and we reduce Dwight's account by 50,000. Both sides equal 300,000. Okay. So summary: 50,000 removed from cash, 50,000 removed from the demand deposits. Both sides equal. Okay, so last class we discussed the fact that when a bank makes a loan, the money supply gets bigger, right? And we didn't really necessarily do this, but the opposite's true. Okay, when a loan is repaid, money is destroyed. So let's see how this works. So this is our balance sheet right now, and we're going to make a loan. So this never tells you what the reserve requirement is, okay? So it doesn't matter. We can assume it's zero. So this bank could loan $50,000, okay? So they're going to loan $50,000 to somebody, and then that $50,000 is going to be redeposited into the bank, okay? The assumption there is that the money gets redeposited so that we can show that money's created. Okay? Yes, sir.
Why would they have to loan less than 50,000 because
Yeah, I'm saying that maybe it's zero, so don't worry about it. Okay, the required reserves doesn't matter. And actually, since we have 60,000 cash, we can, I mean, you know, you could have a reserve requirement. Let's just make it easy, not worry about it. Okay? Yeah, nothing changes, right? So the cash remains 60,000 because, you know, if it's loaned out and then redeposited, it just stays there, right? But what happens over here? No, Dwight didn't lose any money, so it doesn't go to zero. In fact, what's actually going to happen is there's another demand deposit. So if that happens, if this stays 60 over here, and then the demand deposit goes up to 100, they don't balance anymore, do they? So how do you think the bank treats a loan? Do you think they treat it as an asset or a liability? Does the bank owe the money to somebody, or does somebody owe the money to the bank? So that's how we're going to account for it. We have a new asset, and so this is something you do need to know, is that loans that banks give out are treated as assets because they anticipate that that money will come back to them. Okay? So here you have cash at 60,000, demand deposits are 100,000, now we have loans as 50,000. So both sides still add up to 350,000, so it's all good. But look what happened to the money supply. If the money supply is currency plus deposits, what we just did is we didn't change the currency, but we doubled the deposits, so the money supply grew, right? All right. Cool, can I go? Did you say no or yes? Okay. That's right, no means no. Okay. So when the loan is paid back, loans drop to zero. You just have one big one that you could just write on if you wanted to. And demand deposits drop to 50. So when the loan is repaid, money supply gets smaller. Okay? This isn't necessarily lame. This could actually fit into the the BL Live joke of the day. It'd actually be good. Okay, so what happens if a turtle doesn't keep up with his mortgage payments?
He has to give up his shit.
Yeah, he's got to give up his shell. See? He lost his house. This is what happened beforehand, and then this is the after. So he's like a little naked. All right. I'm going to skip this, and we're going to move on to the other stuff, because the other stuff is actually where this will make more sense. Okay? The other was just like a primer, just to get you kind of into it. But now we're actually going to complete a balance sheet, also called the T account, with the numbers we have up here, and then we're going to show how the bank could loan some out, what happens when they loan it out, and we're going to see how the money supply grows and all that stuff. And I'll go slowly through them a little bit, but I'll be honest with you. I want to get to an example of some multiple choice questions towards the end, so I'm going to have to go fast. Are y'all okay with that? Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to write the answers. So I'll write them as I explain them, but you'll have time. I'm just saying, if you don't kind of know where something came from, I'll try to answer that later. But for now, I just want to get through this. Okay? So it says here the Walden Community Bank has a reserve requirement of 10% on its deposits. It has calculated the following numbers as of the Indo business today. So it has total deposits of $13.5 million, a reserve account at the Fed of $3.75 million, vault cash $2.25 million, loans of $7.5 million. This is kind of like what we did a while ago, right? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Those numbers are calculated like without 10% already, right?
It's just lumping all the cash into one pile, and so we don't worry about the 10% yet. Okay? We'll do that, though. So let's fill out the balance sheet. Let's see where all these numbers go. Okay? So if they have $13.5 million in deposits, where does that go? Okay? Liabilities is what it is. Now, let's say they actually receive $13.5 million cash dollars as a deposit. Then it goes on both sides. But when you see just deposits, we put that as a liability. Okay? So $13.5 million. And we're going to do this several times, so this will be like second nature to you by the time we're done. Okay? So it has deposits. That's what it owes its customers. That's why it's a liability. Okay? Then it's got cash money in two locations. It's got it at the Fed and in the vault. So those are assets. So we put those over here. So we have cash in the vault of $2.25 million. And they've got the same. They got more cash, but they keep it at the Fed, $3.75 million. Cool. All right. And then a little while ago we talked about loans. Where does the loan go on the balance sheet? Assets. Because they expect that to be converted to cash at some point in time. All right, this was a simple one. Everything's done, and they all add up to $13.5 million. You guys good with that? So then looking at this, okay, because this paragraph up here, we could get rid of that. It doesn't matter anymore because all our numbers are here. Except we need to note the reserve requirement is 10%. Okay? Yeah, that's what we're going to do now. Okay? So since its deposits are $13.5 million and the reserve requirement is 10%, then its required reserves are 10% of its deposits. Okay? So that's the money they're not allowed to touch. Okay? That's how the Fed controls the money supply. They say you can't touch that amount, but you can loan the rest. Okay? Its total reserves, another way of saying that is all cash. Okay? So all the cash that it owns is its total reserves. That's why it's not always this. Okay? Not. All right? It could be, but it's not. Because all the cash it has in the vault and at the Fed. So that's why the total reserves were this from before. Okay? And that means its excess reserves is the difference between these. So 4650000. Okay?
Wait, so the total reserves, you don't do the total deposit
No.
at all?
Let's pretend that these numbers here are all from today. Okay? But maybe about a week ago, go ahead, okay? About a week ago, the required reserves were still 1.35 million, but the total reserves could have been 13.5 million, okay? Which means at one point in time, their excess reserves would have been that difference. But since about a week ago, they've loaned out 7.5 million of those reserves. So that's why they're not there anymore, okay? So the deposits do not have to be the reserves, okay? They don't have to be. They could be, but they don't have to be. All right?
Were the total reserves, the excess reserve plus the required?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so this relationship up here at the top, you can move the numbers around and you can adjust it, yes. All right, so now we're going to do another one. So I'm going to make these progressively more complicated. They're not hard, they get a little more complicated each time just so that we can practice, okay? So now we've got a question, and the question is, how much in new loans can the Guru National Bank make if its deposits are 45 million, it's got 5.5 million in their vault, and they got 7.75 million at the Fed, and the rest of their assets are in loans, so we're going to have to figure out how much they have loaned out right now, and the reserve requirement's 8%. So the deposits are subject to 8%. Who has a calculator? Can y'all do the math for me, and then we'll check each other? All right, where do the deposits go? Liability. See, I told you this would become second nature. Cool. The vault cash of 5.5 million, where's that go? Assets. Okay. Gil, that does look like a 6, doesn't it? That's a 5. 5.5 million, okay? And then it's got, at the Fed, 7.75 million. Where's that go? Asset, okay? I'll keep that in the Fed. All right. And then it says the balance of their assets are in loans, right? So what does that mean? That means both sides have to add up to 45 million, right? So I need somebody to tell us how much they have out in loans right now. Is it even, 36 million? If you took 45 and subtracted these two? Oh, that's not it then? That sounds right. Okay, Shelby, tell Sydney how you got that. Okay, yeah, that's how you do it. So we just need to make sure both sides equal, okay? So we're good now, all right? Now let's fill out these things, okay? The required reserves are going to be what value? Okay, 8% of the deposit, so 3.6 million, okay? All right, its total reserves is how much? Okay, 13,250. Okay, Jessica, what'd you ask? It's 3,600,000. And the way you do it is you take 45 million and multiply by 0.08. Because this time our reserve requirement is 8% instead of 10. Okay. Excess reserves is just the difference between these, right? So 9.6, okay. It's too hard for me to do in my head. Oh, 6.5. Okay. Very good. And so the question was, how much can they make in new loans today? 9,650,000. Good. And what if your homework also asks, how much could the entire banking system increase the money supply by? So it would be 1 divided by 0.08 times this. And it's probably a very big number. What was it? 625? So potentially, the whole banking system could increase the money supply by that amount. Okay? A question like this, we wouldn't ask about total money supply because, you know, we started out with reserves already. It's hard. It's too hard. We wouldn't do that. Okay? Y'all good with this? All right. Let's make it even more complicated. All right? So this time, we have a bank that made a loan that was more than it was allowed to do. Okay? How many of y'all have ever accidentally spent more money than you have in your account? Has anybody ever done that? I'm the only one? Oh, yeah, that one. Okay. Okay, MKS, but like my account, if I go over, you know, if I spend more money than I actually have in my account, my bank will cover it. Okay? But then I got to pay them. Okay? So that's what happened here. This bank is going to loan out more than they're allowed to do. Yeah, we don't do it very much, but sometimes it happens.
Well, my bank, you have to spend over $25.
Yeah. Then they charge you? It's all different. All right, let's fill out this T-chart real quick so we can move on. This time our reserve requirement is 12%. Okay, they've got deposits, $27.5 million. Where do they go? Liabilities. Okay. All right, cool. They've got $2.5 million in the vault. What do y'all think of my new board? It's really good, right? I can write, and it's not like 3 inches away from my pen. It's exciting. And it's bigger. All right, and then they've got $3.25 million at the Fed asset. Okay. All right, cool. Let's see. That's it. Oh, and they made this loan, but we're not. See, it hasn't cleared yet. That means it's not on the balance sheet yet. Okay. How much do they have out in loans right now? Hello. Did you just want to see the new piece of equipment? Yeah, it's nice, right? Huh? Yeah, Econ's fun. We're doing accounting right now. All right, I need somebody to tell me how much the loans are right now. Wow, y'all are good. 21,750. All right, cool. Both sides balance, right? Good. All right, so let's fill these out and then find out how much they overloaned. Okay. What are its required reserves? Come on, I don't have a calculator. 3.3? Okay. So that should be 12% of its deposits, right? Okay, very good. Total reserves, it's just the cash it has plus the Fed, so 5,750. Okay, very nice. All right. And what are its excess reserves? Courtney is replacing Z as our human calculator. Okay, very good. Now, look at this. They made a loan of that amount. Do they have that much? Yeah, they don't have that much. So in order to make this loan, they had to pull from their required reserves, right? They got to replenish those required reserves by borrowing from the Fed, and you guys are right. They got to borrow $50,000. Okay? Let's see how they account for that. All right? So they're going to add $2.5 million to their loans, right? Actually, let's do this. They're going to take $2.5 million from cash to make the loan, right? Then they're going to add an asset called a loan of $2.5 million. Okay, those two transactions offset each other. Everything's good. Then they've got to get money from the Fed. So the Fed drops off $50,000 in cash. Where does it go? Hold on. The cash asset first, okay? So the Fed gives them 50 grand. But now they don't balance. So where does the Fed loan go? Liability. Okay. So they got 50,000 over here that they owe to the Fed. Okay. Everything balances. So that's how they do it. Okay. Now, why did they make this loan if they didn't have the cash? Why would they do it? That's not why a bank does it. They do it to make money. Okay. So the reason they would do that is maybe the loan they're making is they're getting paid like 5%. Okay. But the 50,000 they have to borrow from the Fed, they're only being charged 2% discount rate. So that's why they would do it. They'll make money by doing it. Okay? Is that good? They get a little more complicated as we go. All right. I think this is the last one we'll do. We're not going to do the fifth one because I want to get to the multiple choice stuff. But this one here, we're just going to demonstrate because this is important. We need to see how banks account for securities. Okay, securities is a bond. All right. So we're going to fill out our balance sheet based on this bank also having bonds. Okay. So they've got deposits of $8.5 million. Where do they go? Liabilities. Okay. Cool. And, oh, I need to label it. Demand deposits. All right. They've got cash in the vault. Where does it go? Assets. I've got my cash. 1255000. I don't know why I used big numbers like that. They got money at the Fed. Where does it go? Assets. So really, whatever's at the Fed, you can consider cash. Okay. All right. And then they've got $3 million in securities. Where do they go? Okay, let's think about it for a second. Gil, it is assets, but are you saying that because I stuttered when she said it was liabilities, or how do you know? Bonds are worth something, right? So if this bank is holding bonds, they are an asset. So let's write that out.
Bonds is like what people buy.
Yeah.
So it's like the money. I have a bond that the bank has to own.
Right. But if the bank has the bond. So actually this makes sense. What you said makes sense, Shelby. If you have a bond, then that's an asset for you, right? Okay, this bank has a bond, so it's an asset. So let's talk about why they would even have bonds. Okay? So at one point in time, they were given $8.5 million in deposits. Their job as a bank is to take those deposits and loan out as much as they can so that they can earn interest, right? And then they pay their depositors lower interest. So what if they didn't have enough customers taking out loans? They still want to earn interest, right? So the way they're going to earn interest is by buying bonds from the Fed or somebody or anything like that. So they're actually earning interest on those bonds. So that's why they're holding bonds. Okay? If a customer comes to take out a loan, they'll get rid of those bonds and make the loan because they're going to get even more interest from the loan, okay? So that's why this bank is holding bonds. All right? Yeah. Okay, so they can earn interest. But there's something missing here. All right? Both sides are not adding up to $8.5 million, so we got to figure that out. No. They made loans at some point. But how much have they made in loans? Hurry! I only have 6 minutes. What are you doing in your head? You got a calculator. How much? Is that right? 445? What is it? That sounds better. Okay. All right. So they have loans outstanding of that amount. Cool? All right. We can fill these out now. Required reserves are 6% of its demand deposits. I don't know what that is. Of this. Uh-huh. Is it 510?
Yeah.
Good. He's cheating. He's calculating in his head. So this is right, 510? Okay. Total reserves. Okay, the bonds are not liquid cash, so they're not part of the reserves. Just the 3755. Is that, yeah, 3755. Okay. Excess reserves are the difference here. So what is that? 3245. Now, they're going to sell some of the bonds. Okay? So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to sell 2 million of the bonds. Okay? So that means they reduce their bonds holdings. I should put that over here. Okay, so they're reducing their bonds by 2 million. And what are they replacing the bonds with? No? Not yet. When they sell the bonds back to the Fed, what's the Fed give them? Cash. Okay? So they're going to increase their cash holdings by 2 million. And when that happened, what happened to the bank's reserves? They went up. Okay? Required reserves stay the same. But this is going to become 5,755,000. And then the excess reserves are going to become 5,245,000. And so now they can increase their loans. Okay? And so this is why when the Fed buys bonds, what happens to the money supply? It increases. Okay? I'm going to leave this now, and just so you don't stress out, the fifth one, you're not going to see anything like this on your test. But all we're doing here is a bank is borrowing from another bank, and then another bank is getting a loan from another. I mean, it's just loans. Yeah, super fast. So we'll get to a couple of